Hello and welcome. So super excited today. We've got Aaron on this show, and I can't pronounce his surname, so I'm not even going to try. I'll mess it up ridiculously. But really excited to kind of read one of Aaron's articles. Now I've got it up here as well, which was the sovereign network or the sovereign protocol hidden in plain sight. And it was a really interesting take on things and the way that blockchains and crypto projects or cypherpunk projects can go forward into the AI age. And there's a lot to kind of drill down in. But since we haven't heard from Aaron before, we're going to start with an introduction from here. But before we do that, let's say hi to everyone. So, how are you doing today, Exodus?
Doing great. Really happy to show everyone what Aaron has planned. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it looks really exciting. I must admit, I'm intrigued to kind of bat some ideas out here. And how about you, Aaron? How are you today? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm doing fantastic. It's a beautiful Sunday here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm less than 2 weeks out from my second kiddo, so if I get a call from my wife, I may have to run mid live stream, but hopefully not. So we're just kind of taking it every day. It's one of the reasons I was excited to be able to come on and chat with y'all because I may be going dark for a few weeks at the very least here in a bit. But excited to be here. I've been obviously a long time participant in the Decred ecosystem, but mostly a lurker on chat. And so it's been kind of fun, especially in the aftermath of winding down my last gaming company and kind of coming on full time with my crypto fund to just get the opportunity to really focus in on a protocol that, again, I've been participating in since 2018 and have a lot of love for and keep returning back to. And so a huge part of this, I hope it never comes off like we're some kind of marketing agency or anything like that. We're very passionate, Decred heads looking for opportunities to hopefully help, especially now that, we have more time and kind of are solely focused on the fun stuff now. So it's good timing all the way around. Pumped to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a little look at the crypto gaming thing. I couldn't get too far into it. I didn't have the wallet set up or anything. But I mean, could you tell us a little bit about the kind of previous project that you were working on and just kind of some of the fundamentals on why you've moved away from that and now you're thinking about this AI approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my day job for the last 8 years up until January was running a gaming company, originally called Beyond Games. It then pivoted or kind of rebooted in 2020 to be Laguna Games. We initially were building mobile free-to-play games. As Laguna, we actually were starting to build the next Game of Thrones House of the Dragon IP for WB. They made us kind of a really crummy acqui-hire offer in mid 2021, and we didn't really do the startup thing to just kind of get corporate jobs. So we told them politely no and made this kind of radical pivot into the blockchain gaming space to produce crypto unicorns, which was a standout and reasonably successful crypto NFT project in the 2021 kind of 2022 era. We really leaned heavily into actually building a live on-chain economy that players had enormous agency over. And so we're one of the few games that didn't hide token rewards behind seasonal leaderboards and things that were kind of more controllable. Like from May 5th of 2022, when we launched the initial game itself after the NFT mints, you had live tokens in and out. You had a real economy. We had a AMM at the center of this economy where players were trading assets peer to peer and things of that nature. And so we leaned again very heavily into this space that I had been following and working on part time, bootstrapping my own fund, which started in 2020 and was part time at that until this year. And so it was kind of this opportunity to merge two of my longtime passions, gaming and crypto blockchain. And again, it was a wild ride. I mean, we went 9 months, sold 25 million bucks in digital assets, launched our token with no centralized exchange listings, no hidden market maker deals, fully on chain in dexes, and had a multi-billion dollar fully diluted value, right? And so I've gone through that kind of madness of trying to bootstrap a community. I have kind of seen the good, bad, and ugly of that, the bull market, good times, and then, 3 brutal bear market years kind of after that initial wave, and trying, as much as we could to inflect and bootstrap growth from that early phase. And like most crypto gaming projects, we were unsuccessful in doing that during the bear market. Towards the end, we actually handed the IP over to the DAO. So it's kind of funny. A lot of my participation in Decred actually led me to really push on the idea of you can't have a community-owned game if they don't actually own the IP and own the rights to it. And so Laguna, gave the IP, the entirety of the IP, to the DAO itself, and then actually handed over the keys to the kingdom. So the fact that we actually use Arweave to host the metadata for the NFTs, right, means they still exist. They're still around. The community is still trying to build and do things with those assets and with that IP. I think for me, in the aftermath of shutting down Laguna, handing off the IP, we took a quick shot at another IP we called Neo Olympus that did not work in January. It was just time to shut the company down. So it was a very bittersweet moment for me. And I think in taking a step back and going, what's next, I was very fortunate to have Codex, which has done very well over the last 5 years since we founded it in 2020, kind of buying the COVID dip on Bitcoin and ETH and Decred actually. And again, the opportunity to really recenter and kind of go, well, why am I still in crypto, right? I got all these friends that went back to different forms of gaming, or they pivoted out to AI or whatever it is. And for me, it's kind of like, since following this space since 2017, I've never been more bullish on its potential, and especially in the more favorable kind of regulatory environment that we have, right? It made a lot of sense to really stay focused on this area and get the opportunity to kind of step out of gaming. And the last thing I'll say on that, kind of to your question around why, is just this idea that a lot of the people who came in the NFT wave, regardless of what they would say in Discord, were really here just to kind of try to make money on their assets, which I understand. And that was a part of it, right? And that's a part of player-owned economies and players actually owning the assets that they're purchasing in a game, which doesn't exist in traditional gaming, right? So I get that. I get it comes with a space. But in the aftermath of it, I've really been looking for communities who genuinely believe, and I kind of said this in my blog, right? Like genuinely believe in the cypherpunk principles and the ethos, the true ethos of the space. And so I've been very hungry to find groups of people who believe in those principles. And Decred, I strongly see as one of those communities, really one of a few of a handful of communities that actually still believe in the values that created this space, is I guess how I'd put it.
Wow, that's a great story. I mean, I must admit, through the years since, we've had almost a 5-year kind of bear market in Decred. It's been absolutely brutal. And during that time, I've lost a lot of people that kind of got in at the same time, have completely kind of gone. And I still talk to a lot of them, and they're, but they're completely out of it. They've gone back to their mainstream or whatever. And one of the areas that I was most interested in when I first got into crypto was the gaming side of things. And I started experimenting with a bunch of games, but one I really enjoyed playing. I played it for a few months actually. It was made by a company called Experimental, and it was Crypto Wars. And the idea is a bit like Clash of the Clans, where you kind of build up your armies and you take them to war. But it was a really addictive game, and it only had it had an in point and an out point. So you'd basically give over your address, and if you got high enough in the leaderboard, you'd get a payout in Make a DAO or in DAI or something like that. But it was really engaging. I really liked the idea that communities own games, they own their own assets, and they can build these engaging platforms. And a lot of the people that I played with in that game, it was really nice interactions. Even though it was brutal, it's really nice interaction. So it's nice to hear that you've come from that route, and you've had to go at building these games and dealt with the NFT stuff. I don't know if you saw a proposal by Mathis about the stake. I forget what it's called now. Oh God!
Yeah, he listed that in his pitch deck. He actually mentioned that.
Are we non-fungible data chains?
Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But
very excited about that actually.
One of the things that I was talking with VCTT about, Victor, is the idea of, by having that, is they can actually make games for Bison Relay that have these fungible assets or non-fungible assets,
Mhm.
like game characters and weapons and things like that. And I thought that was quite interesting. So it seems like you from that perspective, there's a lot in common there. Anything else to add
For
there,
sure.
Exodus?
Uh, no, that's a fascinating background. It's good you have so much experience leading teams and seeing out these visions. So I think that builds a lot of confidence. I was maybe wondering if you could speak about your group in general. I believe it's called VC Codex. So you're more
Codex
than one
Venture
person.
Partners.
So you're basically more than just one person. That's what I'm kind of getting at.
Correct. Yes. There's two other full-time partners, and then we work with a network of contractors. For example, Bo Bateman was formerly my creative director at Laguna. So Bo and I have a number of years working very closely together to kind of go 0 to 1 and get new IPs and new brands to market. So it was very natural in the aftermath of Laguna for me to kind of knock on Bo's door and say, "Hey, you want to do another one?" And he was pretty pumped about the opportunity. I mean, when do you get an opportunity to contribute to a $250 million protocol, right? So it was actually an easy sell for Bo and kind of something that he was excited to take on. And I hope it differentiates us a little bit. Again, we're not some web design agency at all. Codex is a liquid token fund. Again, there's two other full-time partners and then about 5 contractors right now. We seek to directly contribute to the tokens and protocols that we hold and advocate for. And so I view this as one of kind of many opportunities where we're going to bring forward governance proposals and try to contribute. And we're doing this in other DAOs like Aave and Curve, where we provide liquidity, significant amounts of liquidity, some of those pools, and are trying to like bootstrap new markets and things of that nature. And so again, with my transition to full-time, some of the other partners have been full-time for, I guess, a little over a year now at Codex. But my transition was basically at the end of January this year. It's been a lot, just having extra time and this full focus to really look at our portfolio and go, well, how can we contribute? And of any of the protocols that we're part of, that we hold stakes in, Decred is one of the few that anyone can really kind of walk in and at least bring forward an idea. And I think, Exodus, you were kind of saying this in DM. I've watched as other people have come forward with just surface level ideas to the DAO, and those don't get a very good reaction, rightfully so. And my hope here, which you seem to validate a little bit, Exodus, was just the idea that, like, listen, we've really put a lot of thought and effort into this. I think I have a reasonable kind of process and plan to carry this work forward. And yeah, excited to kind of dive in. Any more questions on Codex? But yeah, it will not just be me contributing. It will effectively be me and Bo Bateman, as well as 2 of our other partners helping on some of this work, particularly the more technical aspects.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of kind of half-hearted ideas thrown around, and really these ideas people throw out are for others to take and build a proposal, but that's just not how it works. So the fact that you're coming and you have this, full vision and you're going to be doing proposals, I think is really good to see. Yeah, I don't have any more questions. If you want to start the presentation, I don't know, Phoenix, if you have anything.
No, it's actually good to bring that up because all too often we do have new people come in, and it gets washed out very quickly by the community if there isn't a plan in place. And what's being presented here is quite big, actually. Looking through the deck before the show, looking at Aron's article about kind of ideas that they have, it's actually quite a big plan. So it's going to be quite nice to flush it out and kind of see if we can get the community behind it. And I think that's really important. So without further ado, let me flip over, and guys in the comments, if you do have, as we work through these slides, we'll probably stop in between each slide. And if you have a question, just post it up and we'll get it on screen for Aron to answer. And we'll try and just flush all this out. Okay, so here it is. Let me move on to the first one and let me know when you want me to move on. And I'll do that.
Sounds great. Yeah, I appreciate the assist on the
Aron,
slides here. Yeah.
Do you think you could give a like elevator pitch before we get into this of what exactly you're trying to do?
Absolutely. A lot of this has come out of my own thinking in how, like, looking at Codex's existing portfolio today, and looking at it in the context or through the lens of the AI acceleration that we're living through daily, right? That we are all Twitch streaming live, right? It seems every day we're getting a new model that increases AI's capabilities, and then most exciting and kind of most recent, these like agentic capabilities. And so TLDR on my proposal, I believe Decred already has many of the primitives to not only survive but kind of thrive in this AI acceleration that we're experiencing now and will continue to experience. And a refresh of our marketing, of our creative, of our collateral, of kind of how we pitch what we have today, I think aligns us very nicely with, quite frankly, I think the most radical reshaping of our society in a very, very long time as humans. And so again, when you start to look at the protocols that have the opportunity to survive this kind of transition and what's really going to matter post AGI, in the lead up to even ASI, I think you start to look at the space with a very different lens. And so, again, I think there's an opportunity that we have here to refresh our marketing and the way we kind of pitch what Decred is and the vision behind Decred and what it can help our society achieve down the road, through the lens of AI acceleration. Any questions on that? But that's kind of the elevator pitch of what we're going to go through in this deck. Sweet.
Yes, it's good by me.
So quickly here, some upfront things. Like one, this is not a full rebrand. We're still calling this thing Decred. There's no reason to change that. I don't think there's any reason to change the green and blue colors in the logo, right? I don't think there's any reason to change the logo itself. I'm also not advocating for any development roadmap changes. I think there's a few things, whether they're community-led projects or some of the stuff the core team has talked about in the past, right, that could help better align the roadmap with some of this refresh. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's any changes really needed to the development roadmap. And then lastly, and kind of importantly, like I'm not requesting any upfront funding. The way I'm thinking about the phases is like we're in phase one right now, which is the community pitch. The end of that phase will be a polity vote to effectively pick one of the three creative directions that I'm proposing here, or a vote to just keep things kind of as is, right? And again, there will be no funding attached to that proposal. I'm just looking for validation that there's stakeholder support and that we've chosen a creative direction. Assuming the community is excited about this and wants to do it, we kick off phase two, which is the actual work of this. So the deliverables on that front are going to be the website, design files. We can certainly take it all the way to PR if the core team wants to do it that way. I'm super flexible about who actually does front end work, not necessarily something I care who handles. So it's flexibility there that can be discussed, but ultimately you're getting all the websites refreshed. That includes all the copy, all the design, all the creative associated with that. As well as refreshed creative branding materials and assets. And anyway, I go into more detail in the presentation on that. That second proposal would be retroactive funding. So here's the deliverables community, right? Like, let's get some funding for the work that we've done. If all that goes well, there's certainly an opportunity for ongoing support and stuff that we'd be very excited about continuing to contribute to. I think up front to frame this, like this is not a hundreds of thousands of dollar project, right? This is like a tens of thousands of dollar project. I'm not this is not Codex's business per se, right? This is an opportunity for us to directly contribute to a token that we hold a significant stake in, and we're excited about, the future around, particularly if the community, gets behind this. So any questions on that? But I wanted to try to frame some things up front that hopefully help the community better understand like my approach here and the process. Sweet.
Yeah, so for phase 3, you said that's kind of a maybe. What would that kind of look like? From what I understand, you want to deploy an AI agent with its own funds on the Decred DAO that can vote, that can stake, that can maybe even like atomic swap. So would your support basically be like maintaining that and reporting what it does, or are there other kind of deliverables you think?
So that is actually kind of a separate project, which we'll talk about at the end. But that is going to happen regardless of whether the community wants to do this marketing refresh, right? So phase 3 is separate of that. We're going to do that regardless. Phase 3, in my mind, is ongoing creative material, ongoing outputs of ecosystem tooling, continuing to feed and retrain the open source models, right? So that we collectively are kind of handing the community this tool that they can use to build their own marketing creative and kind of everything that comes out of that. So again, I would view this as like ongoing content and brand stewardship. So it's very separate of that kind of Codex project of embedding a sovereign agent. You're kind of giving away the lead a little bit on that. But I am very excited to kind of chat about that. But Exodus, that is separate of ongoing kind of creative production work and brand stewardship.
Okay, and I just
It
wanted to
may
let
not be necessary to do that part if we really do phase 2 well, right? But I'm more wanting the community to understand that, like, if people are excited about this phase 1, they love the deliverables of phase 2. Like, Codex is here for the long haul to continue supporting and pushing on that. And to your question around embedding a sovereign agent on chain, like, that's a huge part of it, right? Because I think, especially if we do this refresh, it lines up very nicely with it. There's tons of opportunity for PR and excitement around something that's super novel and unique. And again, there's no other protocol that's truly sovereign like Decred. So again, it creates a really interesting, I think, shareable opportunity that hopefully goes wide and maybe goes wider than even the kind of niche crypto community that oftentimes I think we try to target.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify for people watching, the phase 1 is actually going to use our runoff voting system where you submit multiple proposals at once and the community is going to pick one. So I think we've only had maybe one of those and it was several years ago. But I think using that feature to determine what path the community wants to go down, because you are proposing, from what I understand, 3 different creative directions, which you're going to get to. But the community can also vote to reject it, right? They can choose none.
They can, of course.
But it's a very interesting use of Polite's feature, which I think is kind of overlooked and underused. And I'm happy that we're going to be able to see that in action.
Yeah, it's one of the wonderful things about the collaboration you and I have kind of gone through is, I give you full credit for suggesting that, right? I'm like, all right, that will work well. And I will say that when I put forward the proposal, I would love for anyone else to bring forward a separate creative direction if they really feel it should be counted before we go live with that vote. I'd be fine with adding another one or removing one of mine. At the end of the day, I would have to get behind it and believe in it, to want to do the work on it. So there's certainly some aspect to that, but I do want to make it very clear that, like, if someone in the community has a different idea, it should be heard in this process, right? And ultimately, we need to select a creative direction before phase 2, and trying to work on multiple directions, certainly in my experience, is kind of a fail state, right? You really want to lean into one and obviously execute in that direction. So cool.
Great stuff. Right, on to the
I
next.
think we're ready for the next one. I covered most of this just quickly. 16 years across a number of software products, predominantly in gaming, though I did a stint in healthcare technology, learned the difficulty in electronic health record data transfer and trying to get, different databases to talk to each other. You really want to understand why self-sovereign ownership of your own, money and data is important. You go into healthcare and try to get EHRs to talk to each other. Again, I'm general partner now at Codex Venture Partners. We predominantly do on-chain market making via DEXs, called liquidity providing, particularly concentrated liquidity providing. Built quite a book of business doing that. Other forms of yield farming, and then active governance, of which this is a kind of major effort on our end through Decred's governance. And anyone interested in learning more about me, my takes on the space, what I care about, please check out my writing at the blog. Thank you, sir. Okay, so I've been asking myself this question a lot. I kind of said this in my blog post that kind of preceded this. why now? Why do I want to do this? Why am I putting time towards this? And it really does come down to, I strongly believe that Decred is already delivers on what many others promise, right? We have this self-governing, economically aligned protocol that upgrades safely, right? Like no one else can really say that. There's humans in the loop on all the other protocols. The space has shifted very, very radically from where it was, even in 21 and 22, and certainly from 2017, 2018. We just have too many tokens now fighting for mindshare. I think it's a fail state to sit back and expect people to kind of find Decred. It's just too much surface area to cover now. And then I think we all understand this, probably not super radical to just say timing is everything, right? I think we are best positioned if we get a refresh done now in anticipation of the long-awaited dip in Bitcoin dominance and kind of the kickoff of a true alt season, which we just haven't said. I mean, Phoenix, you called it out earlier. It's kind of been a 5-year bear. It's been pretty tough. And this leads me to kind of this point of, I don't think we're a relic, right? I think we're a future ready protocol hiding in plain sight. And a huge part of this refresh is just attempting to remarket our protocol in a new light that hopefully gets more attention than we've had in the past. Next slide, please. So quickly, probably no arguments here, right? Like hype bullshit steals the spotlight. Like I'm not even gonna talk about meme coins. Like look at Cardano, ICP, Stella, I mean, it's just, I could go down the list, right? It's just, we've seen this. We continue to see this. Vaporware drowns out world-class tech. I think people who have heard of Decred, they almost always say, well, that was kind of around the time of Litecoin or Dash or Digibyte. And we just kind of get lumped in with this group of coins, and nothing against them. But I think if you put what Decred has done over the same period of time, like it's just a night and day difference. Like here's a protocol that's actually evolving, that's actually advancing versus stagnating. And so we need to break out of that stigma. All of this leads to probably the most egregious thing that I think has happened is just we've fragmented our story across all of our different sites. It's very unclear that these sites are all a part of the Decred ecosystem. There's a lack of cohesion and design style that's coming across in that. And anyway, I can't take credit for this tagline. I saw it on Twitter with respect to another project, but I think it's applicable. Like we've over-engineered our protocol here and under-engineered our story. And I think we need to spend a little bit of time on that. Next slide, please. So the path forward is simple. We don't need a rebuild, right? The tech is there. What's missing is focus, right? Let's refocus the narrative. Let's give top crypto voices. I mean, we've all shared them, whether it's Kathy Wood or Bernanke or Charlie Lee or whoever, right? There's been many, many times throughout Decred's history that prominent people have given it a shout out for various reasons that still exist and are embedded primitives in the protocol today, right? And so I think it's very important to give them a reason to look at us again, right? And if they come back and it looks like kind of the same thing, I don't think it adequately helps people understand like how much the protocol has actually evolved and is really proving out some of the features that were there from the beginning, right? Its ability to actually evolve at the whim of the stakeholders, et cetera, right? So it comes down to ultimately upgrading the story. Let's sharpen the message. Let's reignite interest. And in particular, let's put a spotlight on our sovereign infrastructure, which I think is really the avenue that puts Decred at the forefront. And there's really not a protocol that can compete with it on that vector. Next slide, please, sir. So the crux of the pitch, kind of like I gave in the TLDR, is let's embrace this agentic future that we're living daily, right? If you believe AI acceleration is inevitable and you kind of see the fork in the road of like this dystopian vision of centralized AI, right? If OpenAI wins, we're in deep, deep, deep shit, versus a decentralized distributed AI. Well, I want a future where everyone's running a sovereign LLM at home that they can trust, that their data is staying with them, right? And again, if you believe in that future, I think it's very easy to take the next leap, which is Decred already has these core primitives, right? And agentic systems need sovereign infrastructure and are going to want sovereign infrastructure. If I have an agent that I'm sending out in the world into cyberspace to do things for me, I do not want it shut down by the Stripe API. I do not want it censored, right? And so again, when you really think about what that means and what rails I want an agent of mine, initially it's always human in the loop, right? Eventually it won't be. I think that demands sovereign infrastructure. And so it's an opportunity, again, to repivot or remarket how we talk about Decred in a way that I think lines us up with this coming wave, right? So AI isn't a threat to Decred. I think it's our moment to lead. Any questions on that? Otherwise, we can kind of run through the next couple, the vision and.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I kind of look at AI as is it's a more advanced aspect of automation, if you like, and a lot of what Decred does is, like you said about the stakeholder enforcement. When you have your vote, it kind of goes into the system, and there's no kind of human after the vote. There's no human element in that. It kind of all happens in this automated process. And I think that's something that maybe when you don't have the proper perspective on AI, maybe that kind of puts a bit of fear into it. And like you said, and a lot of what Decred already does has all this advanced automation already. Yeah, there's still a couple of human elements, which I quite like. I quite like the fact that I physically have to put a vote in, or I have to physically do certain actions. But then once that action's done, the system takes over, and I quite like that. And I guess that is, if I'm wrong, just kind of call me out on it. But I guess that is still kind of what we're classing as AI in this context.
Absolutely. It starts with human in the loop, right? These agentic systems will have a human telling them to go out and do things for quite some time. I think we all probably want that that time frame to last as long as possible, because after that, I think things really radically change. So yeah, it's important to kind of, I'm looking at what we can kind of do today, not necessarily 5 years in the future, right? And so it's very much, I mean, we're very close to agents being able to contribute code to Decred, right? I'm sure the core team is like, oh God, but that's the reality of it, right? You just continue to see these things get better and better and better and better. And maybe it's not to Decred itself, but it's to, it's enhancing the UI on Bison Relay, right? It's adding new currencies to the wallet, right? I think if you look at the DAO and Decred being really one of the only truly fully on-chain DAOs, right, in the entire crypto space, and you look at that as an avenue for humans right now to coordinate. Actually, next slide, please, because this is actually leading right to it's just making a perfect point here. So the vision here, and I want to point out that this tagline is not really a radical shift from how we market Decred today, right? It's just a slight shift to we're self-sovereign money for humans and agents, right? It's this living, evolving protocol, purpose-built for post-AGI coordination. And this next point is kind of what I was getting at on the prior slide, which is that DAOs were never really meant for humans, right? And if you ask anyone in crypto about DAOs, usually they have a horrific opinion of it, right? And I got a little bit of this crypto unicorns and stuff, right? It's just this, when humans are in these things and you have all these committees and stuff, they're slow and they're messy. They're certainly a lot slower than a centralized organization. But I think that's the wrong lens to look at DAOs, right? They're decentralized autonomous organizations. They weren't meant for humans. They're meant for agents. And when you start to look at Decred as this coordination layer, and you start to think about a world, and again, does it happen a year from now, 2 years, 3, 4, 5? I don't think it really matters on that timeline. Decred survived long enough. It'll survive until this point occurs. All of a sudden, Decred has this plumbing for us initially to send agents on our behalf to improve the protocol, to bring forward new integrations, right? To, help market and scale and grow this thing. In a way that I think ultimately will actually be more efficient at coordinating than humans trying to participate in DAOs. So Phoenix, you're absolutely right. I'm not saying that, let's all walk away and just let agents kind of run with this. We're not really there yet. But again, if you believe in AI acceleration, we're not very far from a point where they can begin to make meaningful contributions to the protocol at all layers of the stack. And so ultimately, like I've been saying, this reboot, this marketing refresh is really just designed to try to align Decred directly with the AI wave that's coming. And I think it takes our most overlooked governance feature and actually turns it into our biggest edge. And we can go on and on about like the OP-Cat Bitcoin stuff and the Ethereum community struggle with like parasitic L2s and how they went about scaling. But we're already seeing some of the limits of how the most successful protocols in the world to date coordinate their upgrades and their evolution. And Decred's been here from the beginning saying, hey, we've got this solution to this. And I think a lot of people go, ooh, DAO, I don't like that. It's like, well, I think DAOs are going to be very efficient coordination mechanisms for machines. And that makes us the best efficient and most efficient coordination mechanism for machines. So any questions on that? This is kind of the crux of it. So happy to dive deep on this part.
Well, I mean, just for the people that are watching that maybe are not as familiar with the DAO infrastructure in Decred's case, is, things like the treasury are already pretty much fully decentralized, where you have a singular key which kind of can activate a treasury spend. And this is for people that don't understand the Decred project, but you have this singular key that activates a treasury spend, but then it actually has a secondary key which is held by pretty much all the stakeholders. So you then have to vote on whether the treasury spend is valid or not. And that's what makes it really, really cool, is although you've got this kind of centralized component where you say, okay, now I want to activate a spend, it's not until every single stakeholder, or at least I think it was 8,000 stakeholders actually vote yes or no, that it actually either gets accepted or rejected. If it doesn't hit quorum, it just kind of gets passed away a little bit. So, I mean, that was one thing we did, I think that was 2022, where we actually took this centralized treasury and we made it decentralized. And then in terms of the upgrades, same process happens again. You have these time windows where it says, okay, we're going to put this code into the system in a kind of idle state. It's going to go through several time periods, and in every time period, the miners have to kind of upgrade. The stakeholders have to, the stake protocol, the people with the actual tickets have to upgrade their software. Once that's happened, then it's still in an idle state, and then the ticket holders have to then vote on whether that upgrade goes through. And the same principles apply, where a certain number of tickets, and it's higher in a protocol upgrade, a certain number of tickets have to vote yes. If it doesn't hit quorum, it just kind of gets rejected. That code never gets to see the light of day. And these automated processes already exist in Decred. And I really like the idea of feeding that into a better narrative for Decred, because a lot of people, they don't understand that. They've got their own DAOs and they're very centralized, whereas Decred from years ago has already worked all these procedures out. And if you want to call it automation, or if you want to call it AI, it doesn't really matter. That, all of the hard work has already been automated, and there's probably still elements that could still be automated or using AI or whatever. So, I mean, it's one of the reasons I got into Decred in a big way, is because of these processes that have already been put in place. I think it's amazing. It's nice to see you discuss that and understand that value, actually. Exus, any questions? Community, any questions?
No questions. But yeah, I love this idea. Yeah, I'd love to see how this kind of works out in reality rather than it theoretically. But I'm quite confident. I know, I'm sure you're going to get to this, but you guys have proof. You have experience deploying these kind of AI swarms, from what I understand.
Yeah, for sure. And again, part of this is the simple process of just updating some websites, aligning our copy around existing features towards this new vision, and how we frame and pitch Decred, right? And then there's the parallel tracks, doubling down on like Cramble's work of getting AI agents into Bison Relay, right? The kind of crazy project that we're going to talk about here at the end around bringing a truly sovereign AI and embedding it in Decred, where I don't have the keys, I don't have control over it, right? Like, that's a radical story. That's as cypherpunk and futuristic as I can think. And it's amazing, right? I think that kind of stuff helps give people more and more reasons to check in on Decred, especially if they've heard about it in the past. I think Bitcoin has this amazing moat. I could talk forever about Coinbase and BlackRock capturing a bunch of Bitcoin, not necessarily being good for it. What the hell is Saylor doing? Like, how is this going to end? And so I think it's silly, even though Decred is a better Bitcoin, to kind of go, oh, we're gonna beat Bitcoin. Like, that's a multi-decade thing, I think, if we're lucky. Or we have, we prove out, because we can evolve our protocol, that we're able to actually like better prevent quantum threats, right? Think about how the world and the internet is going to change with AGI, right? And I would expect protocols need to evolve, right? And so again, I come back kind of Phoenix to like what you're saying. What brought me to Decred in the beginning is this idea that you can actually create a trustless way for a decentralized group of entities, whether they're human or agents, to coordinate and evolve a protocol. And again, in times where, through the bear, I've kind of been like, well, why am I still here? It's been inspiring to see the protocol continue to evolve and try to address threats, the suppressor, right? Like the changes that we've made to the hash algorithm. Like, we've already made radical evolutions to the protocol. And I think, Bitcoin maxis, right? Good old checkmatey, and all those who've left us at this point, they view that as a bad thing, right? You want to be ossified. You never want to change. And I just think that's an absurd take when you look at humanity and all of history, right? Everything needs to evolve. And I think the most resilient systems bake that in. And it's the crux of the innovation with Decred here. So I'm glad to hear there's some alignment on that front, at least. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can roll to the next slide. We're about to get to the fun parts, the creative directions and stuff.
I think in terms of ossification for Bitcoin, you can understand the arguments, because it's worth so much now. Anything they do that breaks it is gonna kill it off. That's the same for any project. It's why Decred kind of protects its transparency, if you like, so they don't add too much complexity, because if there was an inflation bug, it would completely break the DAO. It would completely break the governance. So you can understand what they're saying, but the benefit that Decred has is we are still a small project after 9 years, and we are still logically looking at this stuff, not to add too much complexity, but just to see what can be done in small steps to kind of take it to the next level, which I absolutely love. And I think, another
reacting, right? Like reacting to different changes, changing the reward weight, and then going, well, that didn't solve the problem. We're going to change the hashing algorithm, right? To bring back GPU mining. I mean, these things are kind of like radical. And I agree completely with everything you said about, Bitcoin and a reason for ossification there, right? So I'm not advocating that we go in and ever make like a whole shitload of changes. But if you take this pitch and what I'm saying about AI acceleration to its endpoint of post AGI, you have the best software engineers in the world effectively making decisions. Once we're ASI, it's making decisions we can't even understand, but may in fact be the best decisions for a protocol. And of course, this gets into a lot of like how you build alignment with these models. And anyway, I've got a couple of blog posts on this stuff as well. So again, I'm pitching a bunch of sci-fi, very kind of futuristic stuff that I don't think is 5-10 years out. I think it's a couple years out, right? And setting ourselves up to really align with that wave and this coming change, I think will be great. I think people, as jobs get displaced, as these humanoid robots go out, we start to get iRobot happening everywhere around us. It's going to hit people in a way that the smartphone didn't hit people, right? Like, okay, this was cool. I'm going to get one of these, right? This is super helpful. I want this thing in my pocket. I guess some people regret that now. But we've never experienced such a radical shift as a society as we are now. And so really thinking about, well, what protocols are going to survive that? And watching like the OP-Cat debates in the Bitcoin community and stuff crack me up, right? Like, it'd be a lot better if they were all in a singular form complaining and fighting each other over this thing and then carrying it to vote. And I think a lot of people, because of governance hacks, the DAO hack and Ethereum, again, there's this reputation that DAOs have that, because most of them are not fully on chain. Most of them have not implemented on chain treasury spend and these things that make them that actually embed sovereignty into the protocol and into the stakeholders. Again, it's all really, really unique, and especially if you view it through the AI acceleration lens. Again, I think it's a great way to remap everything we have in a way that better sells a vision, right? I cannot say enough that we very oftentimes get in the weeds on our features and talk, too much about the feature and not necessarily the outcome that feature enables, right? Like the vision behind that. And I think we've all been in crypto long enough to know it is building cults. We're building cults. That's what we do. And that is what the most successful protocols have done. And you don't build a cult pitching a feature, you pitch a vision. So,
great. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
Yeah, great stuff. Love it.
This one I'll kind of just phase over because I'm expecting most people to kind of know what Decred is, right? All of these features exist in Decred today, right? And when you take this fresh lens, well, now this is all infrastructure for the agentic era, right? These are not just features, right? They're the foundation of trustless agentic coordination, right? If I wanted an agent to touch a bunch of different protocols, particularly the major protocols, it'd be great to embed it into Cred, use Bison Wallet to hold all of those tokens, and then occasionally go out to other networks if I want to do some DeFi on Ethereum or whatever, right? But when you really think about, and again, it starts with me controlling an agent. I still want my agent to be sovereign. I don't want my agent to be censored. I don't want Stripe to cut off access, to my agent. I'm going to want it to run on sovereign infrastructure. Eventually, in the sci-fi world we'll live in, like there will be agents that begin to want to make their own choices. And again, this is that perfect. Go ask your own LLM what chain it would prefer, and it's very surprising what you'll get out of that. And it actually favors Decred. And I talk a little bit about that here in a bit, but key point here is like these are not just features. We can actually pitch these as the foundation of trustless agentic coordination, and that starts to pitch this vision that I think has a much better opportunity to kind of capture people and get them excited about everything that Decred's been building for all these years. Any questions on that? Otherwise, we can bounce to the next one.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. I say Decred is fully featured, and it did surprise me when I asked Grok a few questions at how many times Decred did come up. Before we just move on, though, I will say, community, if you want to ask a question, please feel free to, and I'll put it up on the screen and we'll answer away. But on to the next.
Yeah, the fun part. So we, Bo and I have come up with these 3 visual or creative directions to, I think each one of them is pretty differentiated to kind of fork Decred into one of these paths. So the next 6 slides, I'm going to go through each visual direction. The first slide you can think of like kind of a mood board. The second slide gives more intimate details on how you can kind of how basically the creative direction is going to land when you actually get to like what is the website going to look like and what's the style and tone and kind of feel of these creative directions. So just a little kind of precursor before we dive into the first one, if you wouldn't mind. Next slide, please. So the first one is Cypherpunk meets Solarpunk. The kind of North Star for this is there's a book called, it's out of print. You can find it on eBay. You can probably find some screenshots. It's Arcology, A City in the Image of Man. It was written by an architect called Paulo Sorelli, and he reimagined cities as hyperstructures. Kind of assumed that civil engineering would take a couple of step function leaps from our capabilities today. But these hyperstructures kind of reimagined, again, cities in the image of man. So cities that were more in tune and more harmonious with how, at least Paulo Sorelli believed man should live. They had far smaller footprints than modern kind of cities today do. And so they were more harmonious with nature and the kind of earth and world around it. And so anyway, this to me, that was kind of the North Star vision. I love the idea of these kind of arcologies, and I love pitching, again, this kind of in-state vision for a world, a society post the widespread adoption of these technologies. And so that's kind of this first creative direction. there's no questions, we can kind of go on to the next slide. I'll give a little bit of the creative sauce details. Cool. So I'll really focus on just Bo's creative note here, and let everybody else kind of read all the rest of the text. But regal and prestigious, it blends like these light alternative histories with subtle sci-fi kind of fantasy elements. It's that the idea that, you know, sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? Kind of leans into that aspirational cinematic feel. I think for me, this does probably put us more in a direction that we've seen other protocols. I would say the Ethereum Foundation pitches Ethereum kind of in this direction. I kept it in the set because I think of all of these, it's the easiest one to take our existing green and blue palette and bring it forward into this. So you can imagine the new website, in speaking about a feature, is going to have a hero creative, maybe a wireframe of an arcology, a hyperstructure. There's been a lot of writing about cryptocurrencies as hyperstructures that I think could be very inspired here. And again, it's about kind of pitching what society could look like, you know, if we're all self-sovereigns, right? And we've adopted these tools and these technologies. Any questions on this first creative direction, or certainly welcome any comments.
I mean, I'll just chip in with, I like the idea of keeping all of the blues and greens, the original color palette. I think that's really important. But I also like the idea of calling it these hyperstructures, and you know, and I can see that all kind of feeding into all the different elements. Decred the hyperstructure. I like it. Yeah. Sorry, that was just anyway, my thoughts on that. But
that arcology book, definitely look it up. It's amazing. I went ahead and got, you know, one of them on eBay and stuff. But it's a very aspirational, inspirational kind of pitch for the future of humanity. And I think, again, you know, especially if you think about us getting lumped in with Dino coins, you go to Litecoin's site, Dash site, DigiByte. It's all just digital cash, blah blah. You know, it's all, here's our features. We're trying to get money everywhere. It's like, I don't believe that direction, you know, breaks through the noise today, right? And so you know, anyone sitting here who sees this one or the next two creative directions and goes, wow, this is a pretty radical shift, that is a big part of what I'm advocating. Like, we need something that differentiates us. We need something that, you know, you can imagine all the derivative content of people showing off different hyperstructures and arcologies with the Decred logo. And like, again, really trying to create this visionary outcome for the community to get behind and to be excited about. And that's a real key point, just generally around, like, I very much believe we need to kind of take a pretty radical shift in how we've marketed, and we just show off what Decred is. So anyway, yeah, I'm glad the hyperstructure stuff resonated, because I thought that was really very cool. And you could imagine the DEX and the polity and just every part of that is a natural piece of that hyperstructure. And so you could see us maybe explaining that on the website and kind of leaning, you know, in that direction.
I definitely agree with what you're saying there. And when you do go to these other websites like Dash and DigiByte and all the rest of it, you do get this thrust in your face about, you know, digital cash, this, that, and that. And honestly, I've said for a few years, maybe just my folks, but it just needs to kind of stand separate now, you know, and kind of stand on its own and on its own merits. And this idea of a hyperstructure is a really good way of describing everything that we've built, that kind of works together and kind of brings that all into shape. All the other things still exist. You know, we're still, you know, a good form of sound money, but it's a bigger picture.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Cool. All right, we move on to creative direction number 2 here. So we're calling this one Cyberspace Western. A slight nod to William Gibson's Neuromancer trilogy, which is a phenomenal book series. The creative North Star for this is Mobius, if you're familiar with that. Jean Girard, I think, is his real name. He was a French artist. I believe this Central, the Nomadic one, is a Mobius reference. In this way, I think we want to focus very heavily on self-sovereignty, right? And the idea of each person in Decred, each agent, each entity is a self-sovereign, and how those entities would interact with each other. And the vision for this is a much further future. Like our ecologies, I think people can kind of look at and go, okay, I could see humanity maybe achieving this if we slay Moloch, and solve our coordination issues, and obviously rebuild our society around money that doesn't depreciate, all the stuff that I hope we're here for. This goes a little further. It's trying to get out there and be a little trippy, nomadic, very vast. I really liked this one where that bot is, the guy in the field is looking at the that AI, the kind of HAL drone. And again, leaning into something that, is radically different. I don't think we've ever seen a cryptocurrency marketed like this at all, right? And leans, I think, more in the direction of some AI research groups that I think are hot right now and are doing kind of cool branding and things of that nature. Phoenix, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Boa did a really good job of, I think, summing this up better than I could have, which is this is really inspired by late 60s psychedelia, the 70s kind of space age minimalism, and trying to swap out high-tech glossy stuff, which I think is very much in kind of the Litecoin Digibyte Dash arena, for stuff that's more stylized, feels more like kind of print material, texture, things of that nature. I think what's interesting is we will still use the green and the blue. You can see usage of a lot of blue here. The green gets more subtle. It is an opportunity to actually bring forward our complementary color, which is a hue of orange. I forget the hex code, but it's on the website, right? So, again, it would be an opportunity to kind of lean a little bit more into that complementary color. Any questions on this one overall? Generally, I've kind of done a little bit of cyberspace cowboy stuff in my rebrand post Laguna, and how Codex is. If you've been to the Codex website, I've kind of created this narrative story of this, lone individual kind of walking through cyberspace and encountering AIs and things of that nature. And so, I tried not to be too biased with this one, and Bo actually took it in a direction that I really hadn't thought of, and I appreciate it. I think not trying to do nostalgia porn or anything like that, but there is this trend in branding and design to kind of go away from the insanity that's been like the sanitization of all logos into basically the same style. And there's kind of been this rejection of that and this return back to, some of the early stuff, like early Apple ad creative and things of that nature, right? Like I oftentimes think if we were going to give the community a bunch of movie posters or a bunch of ad creative to pitch Decred on, again, I think going a little bit more retro with that differentiates us in a space that's, oftentimes cryptocurrency being kind of cutting edge, at least certainly was in 2017 and stuff. They really tried to lean into very futuristic, glossy stuff. And this is an opportunity to kind of, I think, go in a different direction that should still resonate. Any questions on this style? Of the three, this one's, I think, actually the hardest to pitch what it will look like on a website. But I think Bo did a pretty good job of describing the shape, color, and textures that everyone can expect.
Yeah, I agree with what Phoenix said. Basically, you want to stick with the main Decred colors of blue and green, but you are actually correct that the orange color is a complementary color, and so I do think as long as green and blue are predominant, you can include kind of whatever other colors you want. But I really like the abstract style. But you are correct. I'm not sure how it would look on a main website, but this is kind of my preferred. And the next one coming up, I really like as well.
Check out Art by Mobius. We didn't want to just fill up his art in this reference deck, but Jean Girard is his real name. He went by Mobius or signed all of his paintings by Mobius. But you'll see a lot of blue and green in that, in a lot of his images. And so that's a really good North Star reference for the direction that we'd head. Amazing.
The only thing I would add is longevity, and I always remember a conversation I had years ago with the Blender guys when they were building their logo, and we said, we should make it 3D and all the rest of it. And Ton said back then, he said, no, it's got to be 2D, it's got to be matte, because it's the longevity. It's the thing that's going to last the longest. And he was completely right. Going forward, practically 20 years almost. And the logos stayed the same the whole time. The color scheme that they use has stayed the same. And it's because it has that longevity. And I think when we're deciding on this stuff, maybe there's something we should keep in our mind. What's gonna last, because once you decide on a brand, you kind of have to say, right, well, like Coca-Cola and all the rest of it, it's got to last long into the future. Tivra's chipped in. He said, Solarpunk hype, love the aesthetic. I'm presuming he's talking about this one, and love this aesthetic is Kino. I'm not sure what that is, but thank you, Tivra, for your comments. Any other input, please go for it. But no, that's absolutely great stuff. Shall I move on for you?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, the third and the final, probably the most radical from where we currently are. Minimalist manga is what we're calling this. Very much inspired by Tetsuma Nihei and some of his manga like Blame. I think I actually have, Knights of Sidonia right there. Think about this like going pretty radically black and white, but using blue and green as the highlight colors, right? So we'd have probably a dark and light mode if we go in this direction. Very much trying to pitch a future, right, in which there is human and machine symbiosis, which requires alignment and some level of control over these tools and things that we're building now. If you go on to the next slide, Bo had another really great kind of way of just pitching this. So I liked this pre-Y2K kind of nostalgia, very clean layouts, trying to emphasize this balanced function and form, and then trying to kind of apply this like 80s, 90s film and print grit to it. If any, and we'll talk about Noose Research, which is an AI lab, just got $50 million from Paradigm and is doing some really cool stuff in the AI arena. I'll actually show their logo here in a bit, but they went very kind of retro anime with it, or manga. Another one is I think it's Tchaikovsky or something Corporation, which is a quantum lab. Look them up on Twitter. They have kind of gone in this direction with their branding, and it's pretty radical, but manga and anime continue to gain in popularity. They're pretty damn global at this point. Maybe not have been 10 years ago, but more and more so are. And I think there's something really inspiring if you kind of take that utopian vision. A lot of these references, it was hard to find references that didn't trend towards dystopia, right? And actually Blame, the manga I mentioned, is very much a post-apocalyptic kind of dystopia thing. But what I was telling Bo is like, imagine what the world of Blame looked like before humans lost the net terminal gene and all the AI entities started killing off humans, right? Like, what would that world and that society look like, where there was alignment, right, between humans and AI. And so again, I would encourage people to look up Noose Research and look up the Tchaikovsky Corporation, which is a quantum lab. Kind of look at some of their branding and, as far as like other references go, and what you could maybe expect from the website, once we're done. Again, going kind of harder towards black and white. Like a lot of these creative references, you can see how there's blue and, a little bit of green coming through. Like that's where we put the blue and green from Decred. So it would surface out, it would be used to highlight things. But part of this was trying, I think the other two directions are not very minimalist, right? And so this one is trying to be a little different on that front and play into some of the more recent trends around manga and anime being used in branding. Any questions on this one?
Well, I'm completely biased. I love the manga and stuff, manga and
Nice.
anime. I just think the genre's great.
Yeah, I like this look. My only concern is like, would you actually have anime girls on the website? Or just because I feel like that's maybe not super professional, even though I understand this is part of the design,
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think in all of these styles, we're going to really try to stay away from creating like a humanoid or avatar persona, or like we're not really trying to create a hero figure. I think in a lot of the with the solarpunk cypherpunks or cypherpunk solarpunk one, lots of hyperstructures and stuff. If you see any people in those hero creative images, they're far away, right? They're on the walkways of this arcology, right? They're not, you know, they're not named. In the cyberspace western one, you're going to see lone heroes where they're always facing away, right? You know, he's at the edge of this precipice. He sees this vast, you know, technoscape in front of him. Cyberspace has opened up, like, you know, there's portals again there, you know, even looking at my blog, you can kind of see some of that visual inspiration specific to kind of my brand and IP. So back to your question around like anime girls, no, you know, I think if anything, you're showing off like robots, you're showing off those kind of things, which actually plays similarly to some of the creative, like Phoenix, you know, that you use in how you currently market and kind of brand to cred. Today on Twitter, some of the newer robot stuff, Exodus that you did, even kind of announcing like when you reposted my blog and stuff. So kind of going in kind of that direction, but no, we're not trying to create anime characters and have them, you know, be the focal point of it. The last thing that I'd say on that, this was kind of a radical idea, but it comes out of some of the creative pipeline and what we're really trying to do. I don't just want to refresh some brand websites, right? I actually want to hand creative tools to the community in the form of LLMs that are going to let us be more cohesive in our own style. I say all of that to say, if I give a fine-tuned, you know, open source model that anyone can download on Hugging Face or chat with via OpenRouter or whatever and produce content that's automatically kind of cohesive and aligned, in the minimalist manga fashion, I would love for everybody to maybe individually create their avatars. That's not going on the website, but when I'm talking about the cred, like I could see that having an avatar that fits the style of the world we've built be a really compelling way to say, hey, you know, I'm participating in this community and a part of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like the unity of avatars. Actually, I remember years ago when all the core guys, the marketing team and the devs and that, all got their nice little avatars. I was like, I want one avatar. No, never got mine. I was gutted. But it really does show unity when there's a common theme, especially in avatars. And everyone kind of relates to avatars, don't they?
So
sure.
my
Yeah.
question,
So something like that, right?
So-
But not on the main website, Exodus, to your point, right? This is not about
Okay.
trying to create a character per se. It's about creating a world and an environment that we can all kind of propagate in our own way, if that makes sense.
right, it's a creative vision.
Yes.
So when you guys put this to proposal, are you going to include maybe like what font you plan on using for each design? Because that's a pretty big, you know, consideration. What kind of fonts are we going to expect on the website, other than just the colorization and maybe, you know, the creative vision? Just because maybe there's people out there who really want to know, okay, what is this actually going to look like?
We can certainly include that. I think the only thing I'm trying to completely avoid is like full on design by committee. But I'm certainly comfortable doing that. And we ran through 100 different fonts, you know, for this stuff. So I'm happy to present all of that work and let the community kind of, in the feedback portion of the proposal process, basically agree upon the font for each direction per se. And then once the vote goes through, like we've got something to run with. So I'm happy to take the time during phase one, work with the community to get to the point we all feel comfortable with what we're about to execute. But when we go on to phase two, I want kind of high level sign off that we're like good to go down this direction. Just to speed up the process of kind of going, hey, this looks good. Obviously, the community in phase two can choose to not retro fund until we've made further changes, right? And I accept that that could happen. Ultimately, we should land on something we're all very excited about and happy with. So yeah, there will be, I need to think about the best way to do it, but I will be sharing folders and folders and folders of references and stuff on this Politia proposal. So people can really go as deep as they want and surface things that maybe we didn't use as a reference here that they actually like better than these references and stuff. So anyway, open to help with that. Obviously, going to lean very heavily on you both, to just ensure that the community feels heard and can actively contribute to this process.
And one of the challenging things with a Decred website is how do you balance Decred specific features, which Decred has quite a lot, with kind of this newer, like, okay, we're embracing AI agents. Like, how do you divvy that up to where obviously Decred first and foremost is a cryptocurrency, layer 1, 21 million coins, governance, but then we have this new element of agents. Like, how do you envision that all working together? And what do you think you're going to prioritize with this? Because arguably that information could be more important than just like the creative elements.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very important. This is all about mapping our existing features to the agentic future we're all living, right? And so, when we pitch the DEX, it's still about pitching the DEX, but it's about pitching how AI agents are going to interact with that DEX, right? So it's not about having to pitch the DEX and then separately talk about that. It's about combining them both, right? If we choose the minimalist manga style, like I could imagine a hero creative piece that's like a large, like, imagine what the NASDAQ would look like 1,000 years in the future, right? Kind of a thing, and that's the hero creative for the DEX. You've got, Bison Wallet, or however we choose to bring it out. I have a lot of kind of thoughts on that. And then you would have the actual 2 or 3 sentences explaining what the DEX is in the context of this agentic future. So in my mind, it's about kind of combining them both. We're not changing the fact, or I certainly wouldn't like not talk about it being a cap supply 21 million token currency, right? Like, we're not going to remove details like that. I do think the current site I think is more towards people who are very deep in crypto already, right? And you can think of my vision for the decred.org site as being much more of like trying to overall pitch this vision for what all these features enable, hopefully aligned in this vector where people are already concerned. They're worried some years from now, what's my job going to be like? What's going to matter in a world where anyone can create content, right? And I don't think enough cryptocurrency projects are really thinking about like, well, what are we going to do in this world of kind of infinite abundance of content? And again, I keep coming back to like, I want people to come to the site and go, oh my God, like this project, this protocol aligns with my hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. And I'm excited to kind of come in here and take this fresh look at all of these different features, right? Because too often if you start with like, hey, we got this DEX, it's atomic swap, right? Like, it's purely trustless. There's really no other way to do this, especially, Thorchain tried to, again, don't even get me started. So it's one of those funny things where if you take a step back and you start to go, hey, this is actually a way for you to trustlessly hold multiple major cryptocurrencies. Like, don't you want to be a self-sovereign? Like, that is, I think, a much better pitch than like, hey, have you heard of atomic swaps and why they're important and blah, 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 right? Or, hey, we've got this really intricate governance structure that has a lot of checks and balances in it. It's like, no. We want a coordination layer for, humanity. Well, let's start there, right? That's much more aspirational and much more high level. And I know some people are probably like, well, you want to get in the weeds. It's like, well, that's great. Let them go in the documentation and really figure out what's behind it. And I'll put it to you this way. Most people aren't going to be looking at the documentation. They're going to be having their LLM look at the documentation and tell them, what this is. And so orienting our content from the perspective of the LLM as the end consumer and not a person per se, I also think is kind of a radical way to think about marketing, and will be a part of like how any product markets, right? How do I make myself, just like SEO, right? How do I make myself friendlier to LLMs, right? Because that is already becoming the default Google, right? So that was a bit of a rant. Exodus, do you have any follow-up questions to that? Because it's a great question to ask.
No, I was actually just thinking a lot of these questions are probably better suited for Politeia when the time comes, just because you have that permanent stamp of that question existing, and
Mhm.
rather than this kind of instance in this a now over an hour video. But I'm going to look back on this and try to remember these questions. But I'm sure you'll cover a lot of this in your proposal.
For sure. And I really want to, I'm not trying to rush it to vote either. And so I really want to take time. I hope it actually becomes the most commented proposal in a long time on Decred. And that will certainly show me and reinforce to me that the community is excited about something to be done here, and something we could do here. And I want to take as much time with phase one to have the community align so that with phase two, Bo and I can like run, get that thing done, come back, present. Maybe there's a round of comments on that front before we go forward on vote again. We correct those comments and then we look for retroactive funding. So that's how I'm kind of thinking about it. And yeah, I would love to engage. I mean, I've reached out. I've spoken with you, Exodus, other members of the community, and I would love anyone else that this stuff resonates with. Reach out to me. I'm on Matrix, and you can find me on Twitter. Cool. I guess the next few slides I can go through really quickly. It's mostly just around like, okay, we pick one of these creative directions, what happens next, right? So the 1, 2, 3, 4, is just the lowest hanging fruit in my mind, which is like, let's update the website. Let's get the brand consolidated across these. It's kind of insane that you go to buy some relay and you really don't know it's part of the cred. The Cred Deck site pre-Bison Wallet, did obviously a better job of kind of connecting them in there. But, it's insane that decred.org doesn't also just direct link out to these things that are kind of core features. Politeia should be held up more on a pedestal, things of that nature, right? So remapping all of the major sites together so that they all feel like one cohesive ecosystem and brand, I think is extremely important. Kind of like we've been talking about, a huge part of this is just trying to resolve the disconnect between a cutting edge feature, how we pitch that, kind of the somewhat outdated tone of the sites. Low hanging fruit number 3 is just validate public facing documentation. Like, go take a look at the Decred business brief that's still on the site. Like, that thing is so out of date, it's insane, right? And so there's just a lot of really, really simple things that we can do. We'll put it all up on GitHub and the community can go through and give feedback. I mean, that's the beauty of this system, right? I'm not going to go over here and say, oh, here's what it's like, great, y'all contribute to this and help as well. But having us take some time and attention to really focus in on, making sure the new pitch and the narrative is held throughout, from surface level website copy all the way down into the docs is super important. And then lastly, elevating visual marketing creative. We'll have an open source repo people can grab from, people can use as a reference for their own LLMs when they're trying to produce content. It's a really easy way to, I think, help us all collectively talk about Decred and put forward content for Decred, but with a cohesive brand and style. So that's kind of first thing. The second, if you go to the next slide, please. This one would be part of this, and this will be a part of the Politeia proposal. Is like, can we just name the Bison Stakey and really lean into that? Do we want to lean into the Bison anymore? I think it fits in the first two. I can't right now think of a minimalist manga Bison, but Bo's pretty good, and we could probably come up with kind of a cool avatar there that might be fun. But this is such a perfect example of like, having Stakey as a mascot for a specific feature is very strange, very unusual, right? And then having the Bison as kind of our mascot. So, this is part of what I'm talking about in terms of cleaning things up a little bit and really trying to ensure that at every layer throughout our front-facing public documentation and sites and stuff, that we've created some continuity. And I would like to lean into the Bison as this symbol of sovereignty and continuity. And anyway, part of this in the Politeia proposal, for example, if people are kind of like, I don't want to touch this right now, I'm just going to go, okay, well, we're just going to remove that part, right? But I will put this forward and say, hey, let's get rid of Stakey and, make the Bison name Stakey, and the community can decide. If y'all really love Stakey, great. We'll take a look at what he looks like in one of the creative directions, right? But this is part of that process of trying to align the community's expectations with like the outcome of the work product.
Stakey is very 2017, 2018. I don't think I've seen almost really anyone but maybe myself post about Stakey, like include Stakey in anything. So I don't know how the community feels, but some people felt it was maybe a little too childish. Some people liked it. There were those comics about it that I don't think anyone's ever like reposted. So I don't think there's I don't think there's strong feelings about Stakey. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Part of this note is like, I never want to be the centralized marketer for Decred. And that's like the antithesis of what the protocol stands for, right? So a huge part of this is, again, just trying to give everyone similar tools. So we're all working from the same brand and identity, and then everybody can put their own flavor on it, right? And I think that's actually a good tee up to the next slide, if you don't mind, Phoenix. Great. So another deliverable is this, what we're calling the AI creative pipeline. You can think of that like an open source AI model. It's unclear if it will be an Omni model or a image LLM and a text LLM. That's a little TBD. But the goal here is to fine tune it on Decred, what Decred is, and the new creative direction. So it will be fine tuned on all of the creative content that we produce as a part of this, and give everyone this central point to start and download this open source LLM or run it through OpenRouter if you prefer, and begin to produce your own content for Decred that, again, kind of matches this consistent brand identity and style that we're coming up with, right? So I think this is kind of the way brands are going to get built, right, going forward. It lets everyone kind of lean in and still be somewhat aligned. And I think I'm always super appreciative of seeing everyone who talks about Decred, because we need to be talking about Decred more. But I always look and go, you know, it takes a certain number of times to get through to someone. Right. I forget the exact marketing term. There's a certain number of times you really need to hear the same thing, right? If you're hearing a fragmented version of the same thing, you're not getting that increment number up to the thing, right? So a big part of this is just like, hey, can we all, leveraging these tools that we produce as a part of this work, you know, stay a little bit more on brand and consistent, you know, in style. But like we were talking about with minimalist manga, like let's let everyone make their own avatar. Like that would be amazing in that style, in that world. Like I could see that being very, very, very cool. So any questions on this? But it's very, you know, the worst thing we could do right now is just do a refresh of the website, be done, right? I'm trying to really find ways to activate the existing community members who are already out there talking about Decred, and hopefully more that maybe don't have the time to produce their own creative and stuff, but would, you know, in a world where AI is doing most of the work. So cool.
Yeah, I think it's nice that you've really thought about the whole thing as a whole package. And I mean, too often, even I remember the discussions for the last website. I also remember the discussions for the Bison Wallet website, and it was very much, I'll do it if I have to, and things like that. And it's nice for somebody like yourself and your team to come on board and say, actual fact, this is what we do, and this is how we're going to do it, and actually have some enthusiasm behind it. And it's you know, that will change the way that people perceive it, because it will be just, you know, and it's a lot of the reason that people don't want to take on work, because it's massive. It's absolutely huge to get all the docs coordinated, to get all the websites looking and feeling the same and interacting. It's a huge issue, and you know, you are talking months of work. But if you get it right, it will have a massive effect. I'm sure of it. And it is having this inclination to do it. And it's nice that yourself has come along and said, you know what, I can take on this work with the right direction. I can take on this work, do it in the right way. And it, you know, I see a massive positive here. And it'd be interesting to hear what the community say. And I know certainly there's members in the community that have kind of walked away because, you know, that there's a famous one, I think it's the Bitcoin bull. He replies to everyone, where's the marketing? You know, everything he says, where's the marketing? In actual fact, when someone like yourself comes along and you put this big vision in place, you know, hopefully the community gets behind it once we start seeing the deliverables. And I think it's a massive positive. I think so, and that's my view, and I don't want to influence anyone in the community, but that's certainly my view.
I appreciate it. I mean, a couple more slides. I know we're probably like way over normal time here, but I can get through them in a couple minutes, and then I'd love to see if
we
we've got
got
any
time.
community.
No,
All
yeah,
right,
no
perfect.
need to rush, man. We got time. Oh,
Cool.
what's going on here? Hold on. I think this slide might be slightly bigger. Let me just. There you go. I think that's right.
Cool.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. The key point here is kind of what I was saying earlier. Like I can do work with my team and get a refresh done, but if we don't parallel track a bunch of initiatives, it's not going to help, right? And so I'd love to see us continue to double down on the agent experiments. I'm super happy to see Cramble get some retroactive funding on his agent. I would love to see more and more of that. I'm excited by Pong and poker coming. One of the realizations with crypto unicorns, quite frankly, was like players, when they were making hundreds of dollars a day, didn't mind clicking a bunch of buttons on their farm and, managing the very complex economy simulator that was crypto unicorns. I basically put a market simulator on top of this like kind of crazy unicorn IP that we had. So it was strange, but it attracted people who like playing Civilization, like playing like Offworld Trading Company and things like that. Point being, though, a lot of people wanted bots doing this work, and I'm actually kind of like a little sad that we weren't here today with crypto unicorns, because I think we would have actually been a lot more successful in that there's a certain type of player that wants to manage teams of agents and see how they do against other teams of agents, right? And you become more of a manager than someone actually, playing the game. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff that we could see built off of these first kind of foundational, very simple games that could be very exciting. So I'd love to see us double down on that. In my own research and development of this, I spent a lot of time taking some of the prompts I'd seen other community members put forward and put, as well as some of my own prompts, asking various LLMs, GPT and Gemini and Claude and DeepSeek, et cetera, what's the most sovereign token, right? Like, which token do you think AI is most likely to adopt? Which token do you think ASI is most likely to adopt? All roads lead to Decred, and I want to create these open source prompts, if you will, that people can look at and go, it doesn't even mention Decred, right? It's not a leading prompt, right? They didn't, say it has to be Decred or blah, blah, blah. And use that as a way, like, because again, LLMs are already becoming the new Google. They will be more so and more so how people discover every kind of product and every kind of protocol. And so, for whatever reason, they seem to favor Decred right now, and we've done nothing, in terms of beyond just a few people kind of saying, "Hey, ask AI about Decred," and I think we could really lean into that heavily post a refresh. Another one is OG outreach. I talked about it earlier, and I think a lot of us still hold out hope that the OGs remember Decred and would certainly be excited to see it, still around. And I think the opportunity to post the marketing refresh, come back, for people who maybe haven't followed a lot of the governance votes and haven't understood how much has happened and occurred over the last like 5 years, it's really insane. And I think there's very few protocols that can stand up to that level of like innovation and change and upgrades and stuff. And so post a refresh, it's time to go back to OGs. I do have a reasonable connection into Mario over at Placeholder, and I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about this Decred thing, blah blah blah," and he mentioned, Placeholder still holding, and they'd be excited to check that out, right? So again, I make no commitments that we're going to get anything out of that, but I did pitch them for crypto unicorns, and I know Mario; he's a good guy, and so it's one of those things where, given a refresh, there's this opportunity to look again, and I would hope that if this refresh is resonating with the community, other people are thinking about what protocols are most likely to survive and thrive in a post AGI world, this lines up and they go, wow, this is actually amazing. And then lastly, like Decred's not dead, a little alliteration on that, kind of coming off the WTF is Decred stuff, which again, I appreciate when community members come forward with that stuff. Decred's not dead to me is a pivot of that leans into the history, the fact that we've been around, we've already, we've never had a governance attack, the treasury is still intact, like all of this stuff that new protocols can't compete with, and all the protocols that have been around with us haven't really done anything since they launched. And so I would really lean heavily into a series of these kind of Decred's Not Dead infographics that speak to that, speak to the roadmap, speak to the evolution, and are, of course, rebranded in this new kind of style. So again, I don't want to do a siloed brand refresh. It will not work. We kind of all need to do this coordinated push to reignite Decred. Cool. I think roadmap is next, and then the fun slide at the end. Like I said earlier, I don't think the roadmap needs to change. I do think that we should see. It would be nice to get another roadmap. I think it's been 2018 or something since Jake put forward one. So I think it would be great to get a little bit more there. Part of the reorg of the site and everything is going to be more easily pointing people in the direction of here's the work that's happening now, right? I think we do have to improve how we circulate what everyone's kind of working on and doing, especially in a world where agents start to push code, right? And again, protocol level, long time from now, but I'm certain there are things that they could help with, just making UI better and things of that nature. But like I said, I'm not advocating for any changes to the roadmap. To the extent that community members want to help, agentic readiness, and Crample's already doing this, right? Let's double down on making it super easy for LLMs to spin up a Decred wallet to get into Bison Relay, right? Whether it's through model context protocols, right, or MCP servers. That one warps my brain because I always think multi-party computation, so I have to flip those two. That kind of stuff I think would go a really, really long way. I can one-click deploy wallet and talk to my agent about it, right? Like Bison Relay is a horrific experience trying to get through the onboarding. It will not be for an AI. It won't be. I can just tell it what to tell people. Oh, send me an update when a channel thread has posted. I don't like the Bison Relay UI, so I'm going to have my LLM build my version of the UI that sits on top of the primitive, right? I mean, when you start to really think about it in that fashion, some of our UX kind of weaknesses, if you will, go away because the way people are going to interface with applications and protocols is changing. And I think, again, that's a part of this refresh, really trying to embrace that. Non-fungible data chains we talked about. I loved this idea coming out of Matthias's kind of shower thoughts, and he didn't necessarily propose it in this way, but I immediately went, wow. I mean, if you, and this is a good thing to call out, like, again, I'm not advocating to like change Decred so that we're deploying large language models on it. That's not really what it's for, right? But you could use non-fungible data chains to like anchor AI models, anchor the weights. Now, when I go and talk to a model, I know and can trust that it hasn't been changed. It's not been fine-tuned. They've not inserted a bias in it, right? Like alignment proofs, inference logs. There's all kinds of radical stuff that I think are existing layer 2, with this proposal could do. So I would love to see him pursue this work. And double down on it. And then the last one is a passion of mine, is just ZK Decred. I've seen Buck talk about it. I think zero knowledge is for sure the future of the space. I would love to see a trustless version of Decred that I can use on, say, Ethereum and participate in DeFi. And I know some of the community is going to hate that, but we cannot deny the massive pile of decentralized exchange liquidity that exists over there, the billions of dollars of Bitcoin, whether it's wrapped or TBTC or some of the other derivatives have gone over there that are many times our existing market cap. And so, again, I think building a bridge over there, not just so I can hold ETH in Bison Wallet, but actually take Decred across and do very interesting things with it would be great. So stepping back again, I'm not saying the core team needs to do anything different, right? But I've seen a lot of community developers really putting forward interesting shit that I would love to see get funded, that I think aligns very nicely with what we're doing here. And the last thing I'll say is, like, I would love to see us kind of bury the hatchet a little bit with the Ethereum community. I know why we've not liked Vitalik for his early comments around Decred and things of that nature. But the Ethereum community has faced the BTC maxis for many years, and so I actually think that community of any of the opposing like protocols in the space has the opportunity to be very interested in a truly sovereign store of value with some really interesting applications in an AI future, right? And I'm seeing people like, because I obviously hold Ethereum. We're a Bitcoin dominant fund, but I still have a lot of Ethereum. And so I follow that community very closely, like Eric Connor and these guys who are also arriving at the idea of, oh my God, agents are about to be at a point where they're contributing to protocols, where they're actually interacting and interfacing with protocols. And what does that mean? And what protocols are going to survive? And so I see elements of that, that again, could be very, very interesting. So anyway, that's kind of my justification for these three, because I wanted to try to surface a few things where I'm like, I think these would actually meaningfully help accelerate and show that Decred is not only like built for this, but also building in this direction, if that makes sense. Any questions on any of this? Otherwise, we can kind of get to the pie in the sky fun thing at the end. And
yeah, I mean, both myself and Exodus have touched on having a new roadmap. As you know, last year the existing roadmap actually finished, so they got the mesh mixer. So it would be nice to have another roadmap. I think this is just me talking now. If for no other reason, to coordinate the community, to actually coordinate devs and future devs to come in and say, oh, people are needed over there to do this specific work or whatever, But so yeah, I think a roadmap. Maybe not a yearly roadmap, because Decode doesn't really work like that. Like I said, the 2016-17 roadmap actually lasted until last year, 2024. So having a long-term roadmap that says this stuff's happening, and this is what you can work on if you want to join
over. Yeah, give us a 5-year roadmap with the idea that we reach AGI in 3 to 5 years and ASI in 5 to 10, which is what most AI researchers are saying now, right? Like that's just the timeline. And so again, let's think about what that future really means and what's going to be the best money to hold in that future. And I think if we align around that, it'd be an enormous rallying cry. And I would say on like ongoing support and things like that, obviously I'm product owner, product manager for a very long time. Like if it's a lack of somebody raising a hand and just saying, hey, I'll help coordinate that and do that work, like I could see that being a part of the ongoing support and trying to, ensure we all stay a little bit more updated on what's happening. And I agree completely. I think longer term roadmaps are actually the best, because Decred has delivered against a massive and very long term roadmap. Which again, stand up another protocol that's kind of done that. There's only a handful that I would say meet that criteria. So another way to differentiate and kind of show like, hey, we're not dead and we're doing all this amazing stuff, going forward on a long-term time horizon. Cool.
So
I liked
all right.
Sorry.
So yeah, I was just going to say, historically, people like to point to Politeia as kind of the roadmap. But I think we can agree that's not really realistic for kind of the average user who just wants to quickly find out, okay, what's Decred doing, rather than having to pick through Politeia or GitHub. Right now it's basically for the DEX, the mesh network, adding Monero, improving the experience for some of these other coins. They're adding MEXC for the arbitrage bot. And then outside of that, I know they're adding voice support to like Bison Relay, so you can do phone calls. And then there's always ongoing work for DCRD to optimize it. But I totally agree. We need like a really just simplified roadmap that anyone can come and see and say, wow, okay, Decred's doing cool things, rather than saying, oh, go to Politeia and, figure it out yourself. It's not conducive. And my one question here is how difficult do you think it would be to add Decred to zero knowledge, to ZK DCR to the ETH network? And is this part of your proposal, or is this something you're just suggesting?
I'm just suggesting it, right? I'm playing off a thing that I've seen Buck, suggest many times, right? I do believe it's technically feasible to now to deliver on this. Originally, I thought there was a more complicated route of in the same way we use the atomic swaps and the DEX to get Ethereum on Polygon, right? I mean, effectively, you're just, Ethereum on Polygon is just a smart contract, right? And so that smart contract is listening for the event, and that it, when the criteria has been met, it's going to actually transmit Ethereum over to that wallet. I thought, well, that might be an interesting way to kind of do it, and do it in a trustless way, where on ETH mainnet, you're effectively making a transfer, and that's really the bridge over there. But I think that's mixing and matching technology that should not be mixed and matched, right? Atomic swaps are atomic swaps, right? I want a sovereign trustless way to transfer two different, let's say L1, technically L2 in the case of Polygon currencies, and hold them in my wallet in a way that's sovereign, right? And full SPV and all that great stuff. So again, I'm convinced that zero knowledge tech is at the point that we could create this bridge for Decred, and I think it would be a huge win. But again, engineers on my side, we've only got one smart contract engineer, and we're probably not the best team to take that on, right? I mean, that is moon math. Zero knowledge is for sure moon math. It certainly aligns us with the Ethereum roadmap very nicely, though, in a way that maybe gets some of that community reinterested in Decred, or interested in Decred for the first time. But to clearly answer your question, Exodus, no, each of these three things are not things that I think Codex would be great at. I'm hopeful that we see developers from the community come forward and seek funding and get excited about really pursuing these directions, because too long we've kind of waited for centralized exchanges to list, right? Coinbase doesn't charge a fee. Shit. I went through that process with crypto unicorns, right? It's just a black box mess. You got to know somebody, the mafia, all that craziness. And I think we have to get around the idea that we need centralized exchanges at this point, right? DEXs continue to grow in volume. You're seeing meme coins proved this. Meme coins on DEXs got listed on SEXs. They list things that have traction and will drive fees. It's a very simple equation for these centralized exchanges. They're greedy and they want money, right? So again, to put forward something like ZK Decred is just an opportunity, I think, to because none of us want to trade a wrapped version of Decred. That defeats the purpose, right? So can we create this truly trustless bridge over to an ecosystem that again has an enormous amount of liquidity and activity on it? And I would love to help bootstrap those markets. I mean, that's something that Codex could certainly help if we could get it built. So cool.
Yeah, sounds very cool.
Well, kind of at the last slide, we're at the end here. If you'll scroll to the next one, Phoenix. And this is kind of, I wanted to take a step back here at the very end and kind of go, hey, regardless of whether the community decides to move forward with us in doing this creative direction rebrand, this is something that Codex will be bringing forward sometime in 2026. Why 2026? Because I don't trust an LLM yet, or I haven't met an open source one that I think is smart enough and good enough yet. And I will not use an OpenAI API key for this. But anyway, Noose Research, which is a AI lab, just got $50 million from Paradigm. They're one of the few that may have a shot at producing a foundation model that's competitive. I guess like DeepSeek was for a time, specifically the fine-tuned version that would tell you real history and things of that. The vision behind this comes off of Noose Research's TEE infrastructure, as they're calling it, TEE being trusted execution enclaves, and he just being their kind of joke. But if you look up setting your pet rock free, just look up Noose Research, read that article. They've already proven and deployed a version of an agent that everyone can look at and know is sovereign. There's not a human holding the key. There's not a human in the middle controlling that or influencing its decisions. And I looked at that and said, oh man, this is going to be fun, because the only sovereign protocol I can actually plug an agent into where it can get paid for work, influence and vote on things, put forward proposals, is Decred. And so this vision here for me is an opportunity to embed a sovereign agent into Decred in a way that hopefully helps drive interest and attention. Because I think this is a radical, extremely sci-fi kind of thing that would be fascinating to see how it worked out. And so anyway, I put this point like this is Codex's North Star for what we're going to do with our Decred over the next year, right? Regardless of whether we go through this rebrand or not, I think if we do this kind of refresh, I shouldn't call it a rebrand, this refresh of our marketing and creative direction and collateral, I think this really leans into it in a way that is very interesting, right? Like we saw the first silly AI wave of these like quote unquote Twitter bot agents, right? That, you know, have a human in the loop, are not very smart or not very good. But you know, we saw tokens, we saw a lot of liquidity and interest and attention, right, around that. And anyway, when I read this article, I was just like, this is amazing. This is some cypherpunk shit. And I want to see how this Ghost in the Machine, where it would take Decred. And that's a fascinating thing to kind of think about. So anyway, any questions on this? But this was more of just kind of like a fun thing that I'm very excited about that I wanted to kind of say here at the beginning so people hopefully understand, like, I'm not really here. I'm here because I have a large stake in Decred. You know, there's this opportunity to come into a DAO, work with a community of people that I think believe in the true ethos and cypherpunk values of the space. I have this idea around how we can refresh our marketing. And to me, this is kind of that end state, which is I'm going to put a Ghost in the Machine here and see what happens. And again, you know, in doing that, you can follow along in the blog as I'm trying to figure out, you know, how you evaluate these AIs, how you, you know, how you try to create alignment, right? We probably want an aligned entity and things of that nature. Do you allow the entity to upgrade to new models? How do you create shared memory? And so it'll be a fascinating experiment. I'm very excited to continue kind of hacking on it. At Codex, we've built a lot of agent swarms using LangChain and similar technologies to run our strategies, particularly our concentrated liquidity strategies. And so we have a lot of experience. I certainly think we can do this without anyone but our team. And anyway, I feel like I'm rambling, but this is something I just thought was so cool. I'm like, I have to see what happens here, and excited to push this project forward again, regardless of whether the refresh is voted on by the community.
Yeah, I really like the idea of this, the Ghost in the Machine. I like the idea of being able to set something up like a market strategy where you say, right, if you see the price dip at this point, or if you see this scenario happen, place my bids and monitor it for me. I really like that. I'm not sure how the kind of ticket voting and proposal stuff will work, but I think that's quite interesting as well, though. So the fact that it's already there, and like you said, you can say to your agent, "Here's my Decred, you know, go and do these things." Yeah, it's exciting stuff, and it'll be interesting.
Yeah, their version of Teehee connected to Twitter and then had an Ethereum wallet. And again, read the article; it goes a bit over my head in certain sections, but they have a way to prove sovereignty, right? And I think that's fascinating. And so, yeah, you would basically give this command line access to Decredition, to Bison Relay, Bison Wallet, right? And of course, it could sign up and fund a Politia account, right? I mean, that's effortless. That's possible now. And what I care most about is ensuring that anyone can look at the agent and know that it's sovereign, know that I'm not in the background pulling the strings. And that was kind of the innovative part of what News Research proposed. And so anyway, again, I just thought it was, you know, fascinating. And again, AGI, ASI, like those systems, those agents are going to want sovereign infrastructure. And I'd love to kind of show them an early prototype of what that looks like. And again, I think it's an interesting story. I think it's a reason for people to look back and go, what's going on here? I mean, those AI kind of slot bots certainly got a lot of attention on Twitter, right? I mean, we can't deny what's getting attention. And so I would imagine giving this thing access to its own Twitter, just like these guys did, and let it go. So anyway, long process to get there, to figure out alignment, eval, pick the right open source model. I'm certainly taking a bet that we see another kind of DeepSeek like moment where we see open source language models really catch up. Because I don't, it's pointless if it's behind an open API or an open AI API key, right? So but yeah, to me, this is kind of the capstone, especially if we get the refresh done sometime next year. We embed this, make a big moment out of it. We see kind of what happens. I think it could bring a lot of attention and excitement back to CRUD.
Absolutely amazing discussion, amazing talk. Did you want me to go on to this last slide, or is it just
questions? Yeah, I mean, if anyone in the community or in chat would love to answer any questions that anyone might have, or if you guys have anything you'd like to address.
Well, I mean, I need to process a lot of this stuff first, but certainly the one thing that does scare me about AI, not necessarily scare me, but one thing I do see as an attack vector as such, is this idea that if you don't train the models yourself and it's not fully open source, what's to stop an AI from front running you and things like that, So I like the idea of what you were saying about the non-fungible data chain being able to kind of track the biases. I thought that was quite interesting, but that's still going to be quite a massive issue. I think making sure that it's acting unbiasedly, it's acting in your best interest, and it's not being someone else tapping into your AI bot and telling it to do stuff, or even worse, feeding off of information that's counterproductive to your requirements, which I can see a world where that could happen. You've only got to look at money printing and all the shenanigans that go on right now with the markets to know that is something that people will do. If there's an AI agent holding a lot of funds and trading or moving funds around to buy things, it won't take too long for somebody to go, oh, let's see if we can get some influence on that to redirect it or whatever. So yeah, it's
100%.
I think there's a lot of things to kind of fathom out there, but there's no denying that it's interesting as hell.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it's people are waking up to the need for self-sovereign money, like maybe now, 16 years or whatever in, they're finally waking up to this. They will wake up in the next few years, if not 6 months, to we need self-sovereign intelligence or we are all in trouble. And again, what currencies, what protocols have the best opportunity to kind of survive in this new world. And so for me, that's Decred. I think we need to pitch it a little bit differently. And we can get there. So anyway, I'm super stoked to hopefully get more feedback from the community. Give me a week or so to put forward the initial proposal. Exodus, I'd love to work closely with you on that, just for best practices and make sure I'm using that voting format correctly. And then, the plan is to put it forward. There's basically 4 votes. Pick one of the creative directions, or pick, we don't want a direction, right? We just want to stay the course. I'll certainly take that vote, and we'll move forward whatever the community wants. I will say during the feedback process on the proposal, if somebody has a creative direction that they want to pursue, put together kind of a similar mood board and put it forward. I'd love to check that out, and actually, if there's strong support during the feedback phase for that, replace one of the ones that I've presented. I'm not necessarily wedded to any of these that I've put forward. I did consider a vote that is like, we agree about the AI alignment, kind of the shift, but we don't like any of these creative directions. And I kind of thought about that. I'm like, I've already spent a lot of time on these, right? So I'm happy to swap one in or out. If there is a strong interest from the community in another direction. So I'd encourage everyone to really come forward and try to participate in this process. And I'll be stoked to kick something off if given the opportunity, for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to help you get this going. I think it's a great idea. I think this pitch deck you put together is brilliant. You clearly understand Decred, and I think that's the important thing of people who submit proposals in this nature, like, have a very strong understanding of the protocol and what it's about. And personally, I'm all for it. It's going to be up to the community what they want to do. Maybe they don't want to do anything, but that's the beauty of Decred. So absolutely, I would love to help you with this process. But I think you covered just about everything. I mean, we're almost at the 2 hour mark here. I'll definitely have to rewatch this and study the pitch deck. But I strongly encourage you to post your pitch deck maybe as a tweet storm, just because you don't know if everyone's going to watch this through. Whereas a Twitter thread is repostable. So maybe we could try to get it to go to go viral to some degree.
That'd be great. Yeah, I do plan to kind of take out select slides and kind of show this off, as well as just a link to the entire deck. I mean, I will it'll be in G Drive, and I'll put it public. Amazing. I really appreciate y'all letting me come on and chat. I mean, would love to come back, kind of regardless of what happens here. It's nice to, now that I have more time, really lean into a community I've kind of lurked in for years now. And yeah, it's been great to get to know more of the members and get that nice reinforcement. Everybody seems to be here for similar reasons to me and seems to see the future kind of similarly. And, I think there's a real opportunity here if we kind of get out ahead of alt season. I know many people are probably waiting on the meteoric rise in an alt season that we've seen in the past, that we all expect given the supply crunch that we kind of have with staking and things of that nature. The argument that I would make against just sitting back and kind of waiting for that versus trying to do a refresh now is just simply that I'm not sure we can expect the exact same thing to happen. And even if it does, people will look. I think we want them to see the evolution. They should look back and go, "Oh, this is different than what I remember." And I think that's a really important sign behind why is this coin pumping? Oh my God, look at all they've done in the last 5 years. Wow, this rebrand's pretty sweet, right? That to me is kind of one of the reasons that we should do something, right? So anyway, really appreciate the time, guys.
Aron, thank you so much. You've been absolutely amazing. We've got 503 viewers. This is our biggest show. I'm pretty sure of it. Maybe Dave Collins got a few more, but absolutely amazing to see so many people kind of tuning in. And it'd be great to get your feedback, guys. You need to be more vocal. There's some really interesting stuff going on here, and it'd be nice to hear what you guys in the community think. Personally, I'm well on board with a coordinated effort. I always have been. And I think if we got a new team to kind of focus on that, I just think it's brilliant. And thank you so much. And you're always welcome to come on if there's anything you want to discuss. So informative, and it's great to talk to somebody that has been lurking for all these years and has so much knowledge about Decred. So it's lovely, and it's nice to meet you for the first time. Before we sign off, though, you need to tell the audience where they can find you, where they can follow you. And then we'll do a quick sign off.
I'm on Twitter, Beierschmitt, which is a slight tweak on what kids used to bully me with, but you wear it on your sleeves, right? So Beierschmitt on Twitter, or X, I guess as it's called. I'm Darth Schmitty on Matrix if you want to hit me up there. And those are kind of the two best places to reach me. And then 0x Codex VC is our mirror blog. And I post pretty regularly there, talking about building in the crypto space, my experience, the good, bad, and ugly of what happened with unicorns, how I'm trying to build, an AI primer for my children and things like that. And so anyway, if you're interested in some of the stuff we've talked about today, you can certainly find more of my writing and kind of justification and reasoning behind a lot of what's had me come forward with all this. So yeah, would love to hear more people. Oh, looks like we got a question.
How long to complete the roadmap?
If we're just talking about the website brand and refresh, like if we get the vote done, 90 days. Bo's available. He runs his own design firm, Post Laguna, right? But he's pumped and stoked to work on this. So we get the opportunity. I think it would take about 90 days. And then maybe we say another 30 days to kind of go through final feedback and things of that nature. And then there's some open questions in my mind around, does company Zero want to do the front end web work here and just receive wireframes and mock-ups and all the copy and everything, or do they want us to push a PR and have them review it and things of that nature? And a lot of flexibility there. So that would slightly adjust the timeline. But as far as just the production of the new websites, all the copy, all the documentation, I'm going to be the lead at Codex on this because Decred is kind of my passion project on the team. And so, it'll kind of get my full focus with a 2-week dead time when I have my second kiddo here and here in a couple of weeks. So about 90 days.
Well, I'll finish mine by saying good luck with the second kid, man, and hope it all goes well. It's just scary stuff having kids, I tell you. Exodus, do you want to sign us off, man?
Yeah, guys, thanks for watching. This was a very exciting live stream. Amazing pitch deck. Love the ideas. Love that you've come with a fully fleshed out idea. And Politeia is open to anyone. It's not for Decred Core. This is not Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, it's only Bitcoin Core gets to make decisions. In Decred, anyone can come forward, submit ideas to change things, and we're seeing this. And I'm really excited to see how this plays out. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
Excited to come back soon, guys.
Yes, come back soon. Thanks everybody for tuning in. 512 people. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Exodus. And we'll see you